Most of Jesus' parables are very, very simple and easy to understand, but there is one parable that is extremely confusing, often misunderstood, and on the surface, it seems to suggest that Jesus is commending someone who is being dishonest. But what exactly does this parable mean, and how does it apply to us? This is going to be a good one because this parable is one I've been wanting to do for a very long time. That's coming up today on The Beat. Hey, my friend, welcome back to The Beat. My name is Alan Parr. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time here, it's a pleasure. If you want a free ebook, click the link in the description box below. If you enjoy this video, consider subscribing. Hit that little bell notification so you won't miss a beat. Okay, so it's Friday and we're continuing on in our series on the parables of Jesus Christ. And today we come across more than likely the most confusing and most misunderstood parable that Jesus ever taught. So let's jump in verse 1 of Luke chapter 16. It says here, "Now he said to the disciples, there was a rich man who received an accusation that his manager was squandering his possessions. So he called the manager in and asked, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management because you can no longer be my manager.'" So essentially there is this rich man who entrusts some of his possessions or the management of his possessions to a steward. This steward was apparently mismanaging or being dishonest with his possessions. So he calls him in and says, "Yo, bruh, what's this I hear about you, man? I hear that you are wasting and squandering my possessions. You got some explaining to do. Finalize your books. Turn the final report back into me because effective immediately, you are fired." Okay, so far, not very hard to understand. Let's keep going. It says here, "Then the manager said to himself, 'What will I do since my master is taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do so that when I'm removed from management, people will welcome me into their homes.'" Translation: "Man, I'm about to be fired and I ain't about to go out there and do no manual labor. And you must be tripping if you think I'm gonna go out and beg for money. So I need to come up with something else to do so that when I'm out on the street, somebody's gonna be out there thinking about your boy." Okay, so this makes sense. Still not very hard to understand. Let's keep going. "So he summoned each of his master's debtors. 'How much do you owe my master?' he asked the first one. '100 measures of olive oil,' he said. 'Take your invoice,' he said. 'Sit down quickly and write 50. Next, he asked another, 'How much do you owe?' 100 measures of wheat,' he said. 'Take your invoice,' he told him, "and write 80. So basically, this guy came up with this ingenious plan and he was like, hey, instead of me being out on the street or begging or trying to work real hard to get some money, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the amount that is owed to my master so that they will think that they're getting a discount. And then whenever I get out there, all these people will owe me a huge favor and I'll be taken care of." Okay, so still not very hard to understand. This seems like a sensible plan. Now, keep paying attention because right here is where the parable actually turns and something very weird happens. It says here, "The master praised the unrighteous manager because he acted shrewdly." Wait, that doesn't make any sense. How can this owner or this master praise this steward for cheating him out of his money? And so the question is that really what's going on here? Or could there be something else going on behind the scenes that makes it make a little bit more sense why this master would praise this servant who seems to be on the surface cheating him out of his money? Well, this introduces one of the most important things that you must do whenever you are studying the Bible. You have to make sure that you take into consideration the culture in which they were living in. It is very different than the culture in which we live in. And if you're not careful, you may force or read your own culture into the culture of the times. Let me explain. In our culture, if I was a business manager, I would hire someone to work for me so that they would be able to manage my accounts, collect debts and whatnot, and in exchange, I would give them a fee for their service. But in these days, things were very, very different. What would often happen, according to tradition and sources, is that you essentially would hire someone to collect debts for you, but whatever they charged above and beyond what your debtors owed them, they could put in their pocket, and that is how they made their fee. You didn't pay them a fee. Whatever the debtors paid above and beyond that was owed to you, that servant was allowed to put that in his pocket. Now, as an aside, this is the main reason why the Jewish tax collectors were so hated by their Jewish counterparts, because these were Jewish people who were hired by the Roman government to collect taxes for or on behalf of the Roman government. So what they would often do is they would tax the people higher than what was owed, and whatever the difference was between what the taxes owed and what the people were actually being charged for, that tax collector would put it in his pocket, and that was how they made money. And so the Jews knew that they were being swindled by these people, and as a result, they hated the tax collectors. Now, to make it even more plain, essentially it would be like this. Let's say I'm a business owner and I have a customer that owes me $50. And so I send you out and I say, hey, you need to collect my $50, but whatever you charge above and beyond that, you can keep for yourself. So you now go out and write a bill for $80. And so now you collect $80. You give me the $50 that they really owed me. You keep the $30 for yourself and you put it in your pocket, and you're happy, I'm happy, and everybody's getting paid. Now watch this. Essentially what this man did was he did not cheat his master out of what was owed. More than likely what he did was he cut off the top the amount that he would get for himself, basically eliminating or forfeiting his own profit, so that he was only collecting what his master was really owed. And in doing this, everybody wins. The customer is happy because they feel like they got a discount. The master is happy because he still got paid what was due him. And the servant was happy because now he's made a whole bunch of friends who are going to owe him a huge favor after he gets fired. And the owner says, this is genius. Man, what you did, you're still fired and you're still a dishonest crook because of some other things that you did. But this is genius. I like how you were thinking. Now, I believe that there are 5 primary lessons that we can learn from this story. Number 1, we need to be firm. And this is from the perspective of the owner or the master or the CEO. Essentially, once he realizes that this man was being dishonest and he lacked integrity, he decided to be firm and fire this guy. And so if you are a leader, or if you are a business owner, or if you're a pastor or a leader of an organization, and you have people underneath you that are exhibiting a lack of character, it is critical that we are firm with these people, that we do not let people get away with certain things just because they're gifted or they're talented or they help us make more money or whatnot. Because the more we do that, the more we slack on that, the more other people in our organization will be emboldened to do the same thing. The second major lesson that we can learn here is that we need to be honest. And this is from the perspective of the servant. Dishonesty and a lack of integrity will eventually catch up with you. You may be able to get away with it for a little while, but over time in God's kingdom, in God's economy, it is going to come back to get you. It may not happen in this life, but as this parable shows, all of us are going to have to give account for what we did and how faithful we were. So essentially, the principle is this: no amount of earthly riches is worth being dishonest for when our heavenly riches are worth so much more. And so the third major lesson that I believe that we can learn from this parable is to be wise. Notice what it says here in verse 8. It says here, for the children of this age are more shrewd than the children of light in dealing with their own people. Now this, if you don't get anything else from this parable, this is more than likely the entire point of this parable. The children of this age represent unbelievers, and the children of light represent believers. And so essentially, Jesus' whole point in this parable is that unbelievers will stop at nothing. They will go to great lengths to make sure, to ensure that their future is well taken care of. They will take risks and start companies. They will go back to school and get advanced degrees and certifications. They will plan, they will strategize, they will do certain things in the corporate world to make sure they can get ahead. They will invest their money. They'll do all of these things. There's nothing that an unbeliever won't do to secure their future and to make sure that in the future they are well taken care of. And that's exactly what this guy does in this parable. He does whatever he needs to do to make sure that he will be taken care of in the future. And for that reason, he was commended. But sadly, Christians not only will not use the same creativity and ingenuity and wisdom to advance the earthly kingdom as unbelievers do in the corporate world to move their companies ahead, but more importantly, believers oftentimes are less concerned about securing their heavenly future and doing what we need to do on this side of heaven to make sure that we are well taken care of on that side of heaven as unbelievers do. And this is a tragedy because our heavenly future is worth far more than our earthly future. The fourth lesson I think that we can learn here is to be generous. Notice what it says here. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of worldly wealth, so that when it fails, they may welcome you into eternal dwellings. So essentially, what I believe Jesus is saying here is that we should always be using our wealth that comes from the world, if you will, to try to advance the kingdom. So in other words, we should be using our wealth to pour into people's lives so that whenever we get to heaven, there will be people up in heaven that will say, you know what? Whenever I was broke, this person invested in me. Whenever I needed some capital to start my business, this person gave to me. Whenever I was starting a new ministry, this person gave to me. Whenever I was trying to collect a fund so that I could go on a missions trip, this person gave to me. Whenever I was in debt and could not pay my bills, this person gave to me. And so that way, when we are using our money to further the kingdom rather than our own empire, so that whenever we get to heaven, we'll have lots of people who we were a blessing to that will welcome us into the kingdom. And the fifth and final lesson is found in verse 10, and that is to be faithful. Notice what it says. Whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. And whoever is unrighteous in very little is also unrighteous in much. You know, it's easy for us to think, man, if I only had more, then I would give more. If I made more money, I'd be more generous. I'd give more to the church. I would do more with it. But Jesus says, be careful about that thinking, because he says, if you're not faithful in the little that you have right now, rest assured, when you have more, I'm telling you the truth, you are not going to be any more faithful or any more generous with it whenever you have more than what you have now. So it's critical, if we want to have more of whatever we're looking for, it's important for us to be faithful with what God has blessed us with right now, so that we can be trusted with more later. So my friend, I hope that this parable now makes a little bit more sense and you can see some sort of application from it. If you're enjoying these videos, you want me to do more parables like this, let me know in the comments section. Let me know some of your thoughts on this parable, whether it's always been confusing to you or not. It has been for me, but hopefully this helped you understand a little bit better. If you found this video helpful in any way, feel free to share it with a friend. Also, if you haven't done so already, I would love it if you would subscribe. Check out some of the other videos on this channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time on The Beat.